Hello there. A tutorial is the first level we see in a game, and the one we want to complete as quick as possible. Many developers over the years have found interesting and various ways to deal with the mundane intro, but for some, well, it's hard. Here's our list of the most aggravating and annoying tutorials that simply made us quit the game. Tutorials in strategy games and simulators from 80s and 90s. It would be hard to pinpoint a certain franchise or a game here, so we're focusing on a trend. Remember the time when games came bundled with manuals? Oh, those were the days. A small game manual could introduce us to the game in an interesting way without relying on a boring tutorial. Apart from that, manuals, done right, served us much needed lore, secrets, or even small hints what to expect from the game. There were, however, manuals for strategy games and simulators that could, well, be even as lengthy as 200 pages or so. I'm talking about simulators from Microprose or strategy games like Settlers 2 or SimCity 3000. There's nothing bad with some reading, that's for sure, but when we had to pause the game to read up on what the heck was going on, that wasn't much fun. Some games with a complicated mechanic that came with a manual skipped the tutorial altogether. We had all the information we needed in a booklet, didn't we? Imagine, if you will, you're playing a recently bought game, something goes wrong, and the information in the lower part of the screen tells you to read up on the problem in, let's say, chapter 12, page 120. Sure, it's fun when the game takes us seriously, but when you have to pause every 2 minutes or so to read up on what's going on the screen, it's just lazy development. Back in the day, you needed some time to learn how to play before you could get into the game.
Does she look protected to you?
I can save her!
What can you possibly do?
Whatever it takes!
Next up is Final Fantasy XIII, which is a prime example of how not to do a tutorial in a JRPG game, especially if we're about to spend a few dozen hours with it. Developers either squeezed everything into a 2-hour linear tutorial or show off new gameplay elements gradually, while limiting our freedom. The perfect solution lies somewhere in between, where we both feel free to enjoy the game and at the same time don't get overwhelmed. What was so bad in Square's RPG that we put on our list? Well, Final Fantasy XIII's tutorial spanned over 20 hours, resulting in 1/3 of the game being full of linear corridors and lack of an option to switch up party members. The story may have been mediocre and some characters annoying, but in the end, the parading system was fun and the game wasn't that bad. I mean, it could surprise us later on. Too bad though, because many dropped Final Fantasy XIII altogether after getting frustrated with how long it took to get anywhere. Please, Square Enix, don't make us invest 20 hours just so the real game starts, okay? What can possibly go wrong with a driving mechanic on a console game? Well, a lot of things apparently, if you look at Driver. In that case, we're talking about the lack of information and no way of knowing how to complete the task before us. Most of you might not know the Driver franchise, but some of us 90s kids know all too well what it's like to quit a game just because you can't complete the first level. In this action driving game, we started off in an empty underground parking, performing stunts to impress some mobsters. The level was intended to make sure we knew our way around the car before the game started. We had 1 minute to perform several basic actions and tricks, or otherwise, the spectators would insult us and we would fail the sequence. Too bad we had no idea whatsoever how to perform the said tricks. The only way to enjoy the rest of Driver was if we had a solution in a game magazine or knew some kid on the block who had the secret knowledge how to complete the tutorial.
There comes a point when all the players need to show their cards. I love that moment. But first, vodka.
Next up is Witcher 2 Assassins of Kings, which was pretty difficult before it was nerfed. Back in 2011, when Witcher 2 was initially released on the PC, some fans of the white-haired monster slayer were furious. The issue of the nearly unbeatable tutorial was soon fixed in a patch, but many couldn't even get to the first act on day one. At a first glance, the game was a bit harder than the first installment, but we pushed forward nevertheless. And then we got to the part with the dragon. And what a chore that was. With dragon fire raining down on us, we had to defeat consecutive waves of soldiers while also trying to master the new fighting mechanic, which looked more like the fighting system in Dark Souls than in a standard RPG. As many of us here at GamePressure recall, it was not uncommon for this particular segment to be approached 20 or 30 times before we finally got past the dragon and the enemy knights. Well, that, or you could switch to the easiest difficulty and beat it quickly, but we all know that the easy level is for quitters, right? And to no one's surprise, our number one spot takes the Flight School in Grand Theft Auto San Andreas. It might have been fairly easy for the console gamer or the one playing on a controller, but for a standard PC gamer, the Flight School in San Andreas was a thing of nightmares. On the story level, it was pretty reasonable that CJ, now owning an airport, had to put a stop to his hijinks for a while and learn how to fly. A tutorial late on in the game isn't necessarily a bad thing, mind you, but it certainly disrupted the pacing a bit. In the PC version, the Flight School was possibly the hardest mission, forcing the players to perform unimaginable stunts on the keyboard, as our plane was controlled by both the WASD and the arrow keys. Now, it's not a problem anymore with the popularity of gamepads among PC gamers and a chance to tweak the controls, but over a decade ago, it proved a difficulty spike too harsh for many to complete the game. And that sums up our list of the most annoying and difficult tutorials in games. If you want to see more content like that or say something nice to us, hit the comment section below and please like and subscribe so we can make more stuff like that. Thanks for watching and see you around. As always, I'm Jordan and stay tuned to GamePressure.com.